Thank you, Dr. Flexner. So my name is Pierre Giguere. I'm from the University of Ottawa in the Ottawa Hospital. And here today, do we have the, clicker?
There's no functional pointer on there. You can try the control. I think it's on the shelf below you.
There we go. Just to move it up, sorry. No. So essentially, I'm here today to present to you some of our experience with the drug-drug interactions and the safety of oral anticoagulants with, and here I'm probably going to say it in French, Nirmatrelvir, I don't know if I'm right, and Ritonavir. As a background, in Canada, I mean, we all know that Nirmatrelvir-Ritonavir is, has helped significantly to reduce the risk of hospitalization and death related to COVID-19 infections. What you have to know is in Canada, this is the only oral option for treatment of COVID-19. We do not have access. It's never been, Molnupiravir has never been approved in Canada. And I guess in the audience here, everybody knows that, what is the complication of adding ritonavir to nirmatrelvir in terms of drug-drug interactions. In terms of prevalence, and it's interesting because I was looking at Shahid's presentation, I mean, the paragraph, the pie is relatively the same, right? When you look at the number or the proportion of people having drug-drug interactions in terms of patients that were diagnosed with COVID-19. These data comes from the US. It's I don't know if I said it right, the NANIS database or survey, showing essentially that the majority of people will have drug-drug interactions. And out of the people that have contraindicated or major drug-drug interactions, when you look at the breakout, you'll see that warfarin and apixaban accounts for about 6% of these groups. So oral anticoagulants is maybe not very common in terms of drug interactions, but they're the ones that need special attention. In terms of metabolism, warfarin stands alone a bit compared to other DOACs. Warfarin S enantiomer is metabolized by 2C9, and we know that ritonavir will induce 2C9, but it's going to take some time before it starts. And with the other DOACs, they're all PGP substrate. Some differences in terms of CYP3A4 metabolism, where edoxabam and dabigatran has less of metabolism from that perspective. So this is again from Liverpool interpretations. When you look at the different drug interactions, they all have some monitoring or be careful or dose adjust recommendations. I don't want to go through the interpretation here on that table. Rivaroxaban has maybe at different recommendations, because when you read the details, it tells you that it's not recommended, that we should consider alternatives, and this is really based on indication. Is it AFib? Is it for thromboembolic diseases? But at the same time, PBPK studies suggest that maybe rivaroxaban dose can be reduced to 10 milligram, and that may be acceptable in the non-geriatric population. So the objective of our work was to summarize how we manage these oral anticoagulant treatment drug-drug interactions. And this was done in an ambulatory setting, so in patients that were not admitted and that were considered for Nirmatrelvir-Ritonavir. And we describe also the local safety and experience and report adverse effects from patients on oral anticoagulant. So let's just walk you through the methods here. So this was a quality improvement initiative, and I think I'm going to take some time to explain to you how our COVID-19 service worked in Ottawa. So essentially, this was a multidisciplinary team, and everybody who came to the clinic for assessment, if they were within the window and deemed to be eligible to receive the treatment, then they were referred to us. And we manage, we come up with a list of recommendations so that the physician or taking care of this patient would be able to make a recommendation. So what we did is we conducted telephone surveys. So we wanted to know, because we made recommendations, but at the end of the day, we didn't know if they were carried out. So we wanted to ask the patient, how was the service? How did it go? And other points where we're asking, other domains were asking if they started it, if they completed the treatment, if they adhered to the medication changes recommendations. And in terms of anticoagulant, we look at the safety outcomes. Was there any bleeding? So it was not severe bleeding, but any bleeding. But we also asked, did you have to seek medical attention because of a complication following the Nirmatrelvir-Ritonavir dose? You've heard about the Ontario Science Table. I don't want to get through this again. I think Alice did a fantastic job describing what happened. This is what was the proposed algorithm for how to manage oral anticoagulant. And what you can see from there is that rivaroxaban really were standing alone, and we were trying to find an alternative depending again about the indication. People on apixaban, dabigatran, and edoxaban then were either left with no dose changes if they were already on low doses, but if they were on high doses, again, there was a clinical judgment made in order to see if they should be switched to another agent or dose reduced. So the one thing that we did not follow here at the Ottawa Hospital was really consider remdesivir as an option. And I think Saeed's point was exactly how we made the interpretation we made from this is whenever we recommended a patient to go on remdesivir, half of the patient declined and didn't get any treatment. So we really tried to, as much as possible, favor Nirmatrelvir-Ritonavir to these patients. So it was considered, but later into the algorithm. The second modification, I guess, to this this algorithm was the switch to low molecular weight heparin in patients that had venous thromboembolism or arterial thromboembolism. We had consultation with our thrombosis specialist, and in some people, they decided still to maintain the DOACs, but then decided to go with, for example, edoxaban, even at full doses in some situations. So this is maybe the difference of what we did. In terms of results, we had to go through 1,300 consults. And here I just want to make sure that you're aware that the abstract has different numbers because we had to exclude 2 patients that were not really ambulatory patients, but there were 3 more patients that were added. So the numbers are slightly different, but the conclusions are exactly the same. So once we identified out of these patients, 67 patients that were eligible to our eligible criteria. And then 56 of those were able to be reached through telephone surveys. So out of these patients, the mean age was 74 years. As you can expect, this was the people that were really at risk of complications from COVID. And from oral anticoagulant, the major ones, as described elsewhere in the literature, were apixaban and rivaroxaban. So this is what happened. I think the first thing that we have to pay attention to is the number of people that completed the 5 days. There was just 55% of the people who ended up being on treatment. So this was a big disappointment from our perspective because we really aimed for a much higher number than that. Out of the people that were on the treatment, 77% had a change to their medication. It's just general medication. Most of them were statins. And 94% of them had at least 2 DDIs. So there were 11 patients that had changes made to their anticoagulation therapy, equal numbers with regards to alternative agents and those changes. So if you look at the bar graph there, it may be a little busy, but if we pay attention to the apixaban, it was many of these people were just managed by dose decrease. We continued those who were on low dose, and there was just one case where we had to change to another agent because the doctor wanted to get a high exposure, was changed to edoxaban. With regards to warfarin, we just monitored these patients, even if there's some evidence that the INR may go down a little bit on these patients. And before coming here, I just looked at the data again, and interestingly, we saw a little bit of a decrease in INR in those patients in whom we were able to get this data, but it was, none of them were really subtherapeutic. They decreased their INR, but they remained therapeutics. With regards to rivaroxaban, what you can notice here is that a lot of these people were essentially changing to something else. We didn't keep anyone on rivaroxaban. And most of these patients were switched either apixaban or edoxaban. So why the people did not pursue Nirmatrelvir-Ritonavir? It was a mix. It's very hard to tease out. It was a mix of drug-drug interactions. So there were 9 people that had complex drug-drug interactions, and it was not necessarily just the DOAC. It was just other medications, and it became cumbersome to continue treatment and maybe too risky. Some is a mix of physician decision, patient preference, but in my opinion, it's because some of these management were complicated. And doctor says, I remember there was one patient who said, I just can't continue. It's too complicated. The patient won't take it, and it just drop it. So this is essentially the major reasons. From a safety perspective, I know it's a small number, but there were no patients that reported thromboembolic events and bleeding. So that was a very good news. And as I said, in terms of limitations, we had limited number of patients, and you know, when you split limited number of patients with different groups, we even have smaller number of people per group. So it's really hard to make strong recommendations. But at least we didn't see anything worse and no big signal that there was a risk for these patients. There were 6 or 7 pharmacists that were working with us at the COVID assessment clinic, and our clinical judgment, you know, is different from one person to another. So we understand that there may be some heterogeneity from a recommendation perspective, and we had to had a problem with recall bias because there's some people that simply, as you noticed, that didn't remember what was the final outcome. So this is the conclusion. So it was unfortunate to see that half of the patients on oral anticoagulant failed to receive Nirmatrelvir-Ritonavir. But at least those who got it, we were reassured to see that there was no safety signals that was too worrisome. Thank you.